I'm pleased to be joined today by our speaker, Julianne Kennedy, who's also my colleague. Julianne leads our e-commerce consulting team here in the United States. Julianne has spent time in market research and insights roles with Nielsen, supporting CPG customers. While there, she focused on the buy business, so understanding what motivates shoppers and running multiple market research projects globally. Currently, she specializes on global strategic accounts at Clavis, helping customers to get the most from their data by taking action and leveraging their insights to grow online. Julianne, over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Paul. Looking forward to today's webinar where we're going to be discussing some best practices that we've seen here at Clavis and working across our brands around helping manufacturers establish a robust e-commerce measurement program within their organization. So let's get started. So it's funny, but a lot of the time, some of the common anecdotes that we hear at Clavis across some of our manufacturers that have, even those that do have a program in place, are kind of questions of confusion where folks are not really sure around who owns e-commerce internally, who owns reporting. They don't know that they have certain types of data available to them internally. So they'll say, oh, we don't have any share of search data available to us, not knowing that they actually do. Also, some questions around, okay, I actually don't know who's reporting on our Amazon ratings and reviews, for example. Does it sit with our e-commerce team? Is it our customer care team that's going to get involved in answering those? I wasn't aware that we were ingesting some of the Clavis data into some internal data lakes. I'm not aware of that. So usually kind of the common theme that we see here is that obviously as you're on an e-com team or working to build an e-com team, getting the organization informed and up to date about the different data that you have internally, as well as the KPIs and metrics that you're reporting on, can be quite a difficult task. But let's talk through some of the best practices we've seen from those manufacturers that have really done a good job around kind of creating a robust measurement program within their organization. It definitely starts with the right team structure. So I'm not sure kind of how your e-commerce team is set up. They might be siloed to the right-hand side where, you've got a director of e-commerce and they're trying to start building out a team, or they're taking folks from other internal teams to build out this team. Others have e-com within the sales organization, within the marketing organization, and really it does need to be kind of a cross-functional effort. It shouldn't be siloed over to the side. But honestly, there's no real right way to do it. I found this kind of funny infographic online that I think really summarizes the different kind of structures that we tend to see. We've got some organizations that are organizing e-com kind of by business unit, and each business unit is doing their own thing and they're not really talking to each other. Others that are very kind of diplomatic and they've got one global center of excellence around e-com, and all the other markets or within the US are all kind of feeding into that. So there's definitely no one right way, but it does all start with putting together the right team structure for your organization around e-com. So then when it comes to measuring and reporting on these different metrics, you've got the right people in place that are owning each of those components. I will say that there's definitely no kind of quick way to do this. You can take a long, short road. So you can try to take shortcuts here, but it's going to end up taking longer. You really need to take that long-term approach. So as Paul mentioned earlier, we're living in a digitally driven, e-com focused world. The reporting that you put in place is just going to get more and more visibility within your organization. If you've got a director of e-com that's asking you, okay, how's our visibility online at Amazon? What's our share on Amazon for this category? Those questions are just going to come more and more frequently from more and more parts of the organization as e-com analytics and reporting gets more and more visibility. So you really need to be thinking long term. What kind of structure are we going to put in place that's going to get us to that end state? I think the main thing to think about really is creating a center of excellence within your organization around e-com. So you may already have an e-com team that is that center of excellence, or maybe you've got a global team that kind of has been put in place by your organization to kind of lead e-com and the strategy around e-com and reporting and measurement globally. So it kind of depends on your situation. If you're part of a large organization, hopefully you do have that global team in place. If you're part of an organization that's just kind of handling e-com within the US or Canada, for example, this is also relevant. The first thing that you need to kind of have in place is that either global or local e-com director, someone that's kind of focused on the strategy and educating the organization. So when you start to put a program like this in place, one of the biggest things is educating the organization around what you're trying to do around e-com, the different strategies that you're focused on, and the different reporting that's going to be in place. And that e-com director will also then be aligning a tight team around them to focus in on those key initiatives, and then identifying champions within the organization to push that strategy. So I mentioned before that we've got some manufacturers that have kind of put e-com in a silo, which is the wrong approach. You need to be kind of creating a center of excellence that's kind of pulling from different functions within the organization and identifying champions across your brand team and your key account manager, or across your sales team as well. So once you've got that strategic kind of structure in place, there's then these kind of 4 pillars that I've identified that are key to putting a measurement program in place. The first thing really is around identifying somebody that's going to be focused on search and content. So, if you're from a legacy CPG or a legacy, kind of company that's, been around for years and kind of has a way of doing things, and they're able to get, product onto shelf with their eyes closed, and now you've suddenly got to think about how do we get our products to be on the first page on Amazon? How do we make sure that we've got the right content that's going to drive visibility and then drive conversion on our product pages? This is kind of a new area for manufacturers to think of, but those that have been successful do have a search and content director in place that's kind of leading the strategy within this pillar. So they're kind of putting together a content development strategy, whether that's global or within the US or within the UK, for example, within your country or market, or a global strategy around, okay, what are our best practices in terms of integrating keywords into the content? What are best practices around getting content from the brand team that's actually optimized for online? Some of your brand teams might be creating best-in-class content, but they're not focused on the online shopper and how they're navigating those different retailers, and also how the retailers are structured to consume content, and how they, how they use content to boost different SKUs in search ranking. So putting a director in place there, somebody in place that's really owning kind of both search and content, and getting a content syndication process in place, a PIM and a DAM, putting the systems and support around that. You can start to measure content, and I'll talk about that in a moment, but unless you've got somebody that's actually putting a strategy in place of how to get and improve your scores, you're at nothing. The other kind of key role within this best-in-class structure that we see is somebody that is focused on kind of master data and automation. Again, this person is probably not in your e-com team. They're probably on your IT team or your global business solutions team or something like that. But they're that person that's able to help get systems together around e-com. So again, for some legacy, in the past you probably have, very heavily integrated with maybe a Nielsen or an IRI, and you've got those systems that have been in place for years and years, and now you're struggling to get, your content stack stood up, you're trying to get your digital shelf analytics stood up with something like Clavis, you've got sales and share data, you've got all these systems. You need to have somebody that's working with the e-com team to create structure around how that's being rolled out, locally or even globally, so that it saves time for the e-com team, so they're focused on reporting and they're not focused on all of that that other work that, around getting a system stood up that can actually drain a lot of time and resources. So it's important to make sure that there's somebody in your organization that is coming in to help on that front. Again, having a supply chain director in place that's focused on e-com. So as I'll talk in a moment, reporting on availability and in-stock rates is one of the key e-com measurement metrics that you need to be focused on. But again, the same thing, if you don't have somebody within your COE or on your e-com team that is taking that availability data and putting best practices in place and working to implement strategies for online, like brick and click, different fulfillment models, you've got to make sure that someone from supply chain is involved in this center of excellence. And the last thing then really is around the analytics piece. So a lot of what we're talking about today is having the right people in place to act on the measurements and the metrics that you'll put in place through your program, but you need to have somebody that's kind of guiding that. So again, someone that's dealing with the analytics around e-com is important, putting a global reporting structure in place, educating the markets, educating the internal teams on the different KPIs, and then building out best practices on this. So then when it comes to, so you've got your team in place, and then it's important then to start to think about obviously what metrics you're going to be monitoring when it comes to e-com reporting. Again, different people within that center of excellence need to own these different metrics, but these are the kind of the six kind of measurements, or 6 metrics or 6 KPIs that we'd recommend every e-com team has as part of their e-com reporting structure. So the first thing is sales and share. Difficult in the online world. Clavis and Essential with OneClick are really working on this. We have sales and share for Amazon. You've got to make sure that that's part of your reporting structure. So right now you might see, okay, on Amazon we're doing really well. We're growing 20% year over year, but you have no idea how the category is growing on Amazon. So you might be growing, but Amazon's just growing and you're just kind of leveling up with everybody else. But when you compare it to the category, you might actually be losing share year over year. So sales and share, where you can get that information, is key is a key, like the number one KPI to be reporting on. The second thing is content compliance. You need to have a measurement approach around content. So no doubt you're working to put kind of KPIs around content, but if you don't have kind of systems in place on the back end, so if you've got getting a PIM stood up or a DAM and you're working on how you're syndicating all of that content, you need to be measuring improvement because those systems are, one, they're expensive, they take a long time to set up, and you're going to get asked the question like, what's our ROI here? What's our baseline? Where did we start the year out in terms of content and where are we now? So putting a measurement in place around content is key as well. So, here we are at the beginning of the year, 70% of our pages on Amazon do not have A+ content, maybe 40% of SKUs for this brand don't have bullet points online. So all of those, that's where you establish your baseline, and then you report on content compliance and then how that's impacting sales. Of course, in-stocks availability, both for pure play and omni-channel as well. So on Amazon, on Walmart, you need to start reporting on the percentage of time that you're in stock and available versus where you're losing the buy box. so that you can put a strategy in place. If you're not measuring that, you can't put a strategy in place in terms of, do we need to get a hybrid 3P strategy working at our organization? Do we have an issue with Amazon shutting down a lot of our pages? Do we have localized issues with Kroger or with Amazon Fresh, where we've got a lot of issues with availability at the local level? So availability reporting, in-stock reporting, another key metric that should be reported on across all e-com teams. User-generated content. So this is really ratings and reviews. So you need to be measuring and monitoring ratings and reviews. Within the e-com team, you need to know how many ratings and reviews are on each page, knowing how much reviews impact conversion online, but then also impact your visibility and where you rank in search ranking. But then also you need to be measuring this from an SLA perspective or a customer care perspective in terms of who's responding to these reviews. How many negative reviews are we getting in on a daily basis, and who's responding to them? Again, measuring and monitoring that enables you to put steps in place then to improve that KPI. The fifth one that I have here is pricing compliance. So this is something that Clavis and Brandview can definitely help you here with, but when it comes to online, with pricing being so dynamic and changing so frequently every day, you need to have robust pricing reporting in place on your e-com team. So, you can either work with legal to identify a MAP price, for example, and you've got every day Clavis is checking to see, are you violating that minimum price? So you can start to report on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, how frequently are certain retailers going below that minimum price. Also with price erosion, so if you're not monitoring price, you're going to be blind to the fact that some of your items are going to move to being unprofitable on some online retailers where it's not profitable for them to ship it because the price is being eroded so much, particularly between Amazon, Walmart, those retailers where they're checking price against each other each day. You also need to be monitoring that so that you can go into joint business planning sessions and have the data to show, okay, these are our top SKUs, and look at the price volatility that's gone on these items. Look how far they are away from EDLP or from our minimum price point. They're being crapped out on Amazon, but it's no wonder because the price is being eroded so much. You need that visibility when it comes to online reporting. And then the last one really is around visibility and kind of understanding who's on your page and are they converting on your page. So really this is around, search reporting. So, are you on the first page? If you're playing in the shampoo category, if somebody was to search shampoo on Target or Walmart, are you on the first page? Are you visible? Then also like traffic, how many page views are you getting on each of your items on a daily, on a weekly basis? And then if they are on the page, are they converting? If they're not converting, so if you've got a high number of folks that are visiting the page, hitting your page, but are not converting, what's happening there? And then you can start looking to that content compliance score again. So, are they on the page, but there's not enough reviews, so they're navigating off it? Are they on the page, but the content's not robust enough, they're not getting the information that they need, so they're going back and searching for something else? So that last one really around visibility is key as well. So these are kind of the 6 metrics or measurement KPIs that we would recommend every e-com team has in place and is reporting on a regular cadence, so that you've got visibility up into the organization, and all depends. So certain teams will care more about certain metrics, and I'll touch on that in a moment. So obviously your brand team is going to care about content. Your key account managers, they're going to care about in-stocks and pricing. So it's about adjusting the reporting so it's going to the relevant folks internally. So I think I mentioned a little bit about this earlier, but once you understand the different KPIs that you are reporting on, it's then down to getting that center of excellence team working with your individual brand and retailer teams. So you've got the e-commerce tech stack in place. So you've got a champion on your center of excellence that's setting up, digital shelf monitoring and sales and share monitoring. And then you decide in terms of what are our key metrics, what are we going to report on, and what cadence are we going to report that on. So once you've kind of got your e-com tech stack in place, then you need to kind of educate the rest of the organization. So whether it's internal webinars, internal education sessions, we at Essential can help with those as well, so that the rest of the organization is aware of what you're doing with e-com, what your key KPIs are, and how you're measuring and reporting on them. So that kind of sits within the e-commerce center of excellence team, but then you need to get the brand and retailer teams involved. So the brand teams, they're really going to care about the ratings and reviews reporting. They're probably working on setting up, brand.com sites to take in ratings and reviews and syndicate them to retailers. So the brand teams need to be involved in ratings and reviews reporting, and they need to be also involved in the content reporting. So they need to understand, while the e-com team might have a content manager that's updating Amazon and updating Walmart with the content, the brand team needs to be aware of where there are gaps. Are we missing secondary images? Do we not have enough bullet points? Do we not have mobile optimized images? You need to have the brand team bought into that reporting and for them to understand where what data you're reporting on. The other team as well that the Center of Excellence needs to be involved with is obviously your retailer teams. So ideally, each retailer team should have kind of a champion that's working with the Center of Excellence, whether that's a dedicated e-com key account manager. So obviously on Amazon, you have your own kind of key account manager. You might not have a dedicated person on your Walmart team that's dealing with e-com. They might be kind of leveled up and they might be dealing with all of Walmart in totality. But getting the retailer teams involved with in-stock reporting, price compliance reporting, visibility, are their SKUs visible to shoppers, so that information can then be relayed back out to the retailer. The Center of Excellence may not have those retailer relationships, so it's kind of working with the retailer teams to make sure that the insights and the reporting that the e-com team is putting together are being shared back with the retailer and identifying areas for improvement. So it really is a cross-functional effort once you've got those KPIs in place. When it comes to this as well, around kind of the different teams that are touching these different KPIs, I kind of mentioned this before, but really what we see is for content and image, it does touch across a number of folks. So, you might be reporting out on how we're doing in terms of content and image compliance. The content team on the Center of Excellence is working, on getting that content out to the retailer, but the brand team is ensuring that the content is optimized, ready to go, up to date in your content library. And the account team, the sales team, your key account manager, they shouldn't really be touching the content, but what they should be doing is letting the retailer know, okay, here we are, we have a score right now of 20% in terms of where we want to be on content on your retail site. And we're going to be working with you to kind of get this content updated over the next, say, 6 months. They should be kind of making sure the retailer is aware of your KPIs, what you're reporting internally, and how you want to partner with them to get that content updated. Same thing with availability. The brand team really shouldn't be that involved with the availability report, but it really is with the account team, the sales team, and supply chain team within the Center of Excellence to be managing those out of stocks with the retailer and getting an inventory, updated inventory strategy in place if there are significant issues with availability. Same things with ratings and reviews. The account team not as heavily invested here, but the brand team and the customer service team should really be looking at the ratings and reviews reporting and kind of working together to put a strategy in place around review syndication and dealing with negative or older reviews on site. And again, search would be the last one here. The account team needs to be aware, like within your category, working with your buyer to make sure that you are visible on the first page. But then the brand team needs to be providing visibility in terms of how people are searching for that brand online, making sure your titles are optimized with those keywords, making sure that that information is shared with your SEO and your media teams. So you can really see here that there are kind of clear roles and responsibilities for each of the KPIs, but then you've kind of got a cross-functional effort in terms of who owns what. So the Centre of Excellence really should be kind of putting parameters in place in terms of who needs to be aware of the reporting and then who needs to be actually actioning when reporting comes out each month, for example. And then again, when it comes to kind of digital shelf reporting, what do we see in terms of best in class? You've got that Centre of Excellence or that global team. They kind of own the budget for the tools that you're using to do the reporting. They're driving the strategies. They're setting the KPIs. So, you know, here we are at the beginning of the year. We've got a 40% score in terms of content compliance. We want to get that up to 80% by the end of the year. They're setting those KPIs. They're setting the strategy around that, and they're internally they're educating and pushing those KPIs to the organization. And then you've got the individual teams that should be actioning on the reporting, like the Centre of Excellence. You know, they can get so far, but they need the retailer teams to be pushing that strategy. So if there's significant issues with out of stocks on Walmart, or if a lot of SKUs are moving over to being unavailable on Amazon, the retailer team needs to get involved there. They've got the data coming through. They need to be pushing that with the retailer themselves. If you're not content compliant, the brand team needs to work with the content manager to get that content built out. There's nothing worse than you reporting every month, you know, we're doing really poorly on content, we're not moving the needle on content, and then for all of the retailer teams to see that and the brand teams to see that, but then not to have any strategy in place in terms of getting that content created and into your PIM and DAM. So it's important to kind of, the Centre of Excellence is definitely pushing out the reporting, but then you've got the individual teams that need to be accountable for actually actioning on that reporting, so driving action with the retailer. One other piece that I'll mention, this is the last piece I'll mention, some of the questions that were submitted before the webinar were around kind of dedicated customer teams. We do see at Clavis working with a lot of our manufacturers that there are typically e-com teams that are working with the key account manager teams to develop just key account managers that are focused on the e-com side of the business. So you might have a Walmart team, and you've got some folks on the team that are just, you know, continuing to work on brick and mortar Walmart strategies, but then you've got someone on the team that's just focused on Walmart.com or Walmart online grocery pickup, for example. And while they work as part of the greater Walmart team within your organization, they are very e-com focused. So they're more nimble. You know, if you work on Amazon, if you work on ClickList with Kroger, you know that they're doing a lot in terms of test and learn, and you need to be nimble. You need to have someone that's focused in and can work with the retailer on those test and learn opportunities. You can get them on sites. You can locate them in Seattle beside Amazon, for example. You can have them focus on optimizing an online assortment. So if you see that you're continuously, you know, unprofitable on Amazon because you've got the wrong assortment on there, they can work back with your product team to update packaging, getting different pack sizes online for the online shopper. They're more dedicated, they're more focused, they're able to take the reporting that the e-com team is pushing out and action it with the retailer. And they're also able to champion those e-com tools. A lot of what we see sometimes is that, you know, you roll out reporting, but then you don't have any buy-in on the retailer team side, so on the sales team. So they just started, they're so focused on the brick and mortar business. It's still, you know, 95% of their POS, so they're just focused on that, and you're not able to convince them of the importance of actioning some of the reporting that you're pushing out to them, so they can be that champion. So it's also important to think when you're putting the reporting in place, should we have someone on the retailer team that is e-com focused, and how can you go to your head of sales to kind of put that proposition in front of them. So while it's easier to determine the metrics, it's really around putting the right team in place to drive action from the reporting so that you're not just continuously reporting the same data month over month and the actions are not being driven from that. So that puts us right around 11:30 here, Paul. I know there were a lot of questions coming in here, and then also some questions that were submitted before. Do we want to spend a little bit of time on Q&A?
Sure, that sounds great. Oh, perfect. Well, thanks, Julianne. Wonderful insights. I learned a thing or two here too, so thank you. Let's see. The first, I'll grab one that I can answer, and then I'll defer to the expert on the rest. But will you share the recording and the presentation deck? Answer that is yes. Everybody's lucky day. All attendees will receive a copy of the webinar deck and recording when it's available, and that should be coming to your inbox by Friday afternoon. So be on the, if not before, so be on the lookout for that. Great, and once again, as Julianne had mentioned, we did receive a number of questions both from registrants, so thank you very much, as well as here via the Q&A panel. There is still time to enter your questions, so you can enter them into the Q&A box. Here's the first one. So, do you see a need for category-specific measurements, or are there universal benchmarks that could be used across all categories?
Good question. Yes, definitely. So typically what I would say is that the KPIs or the metrics that you should be focused on are pretty universal across categories. So you definitely need to be reporting on content, sales and share, in-stock rate, visibility. Those are, common, those 6 kind of metrics that I mentioned earlier in the webinar. Those are universal across the majority of categories and manufacturers that we work with. But in saying that, there are some kind of considerations when you start to think about certain categories. So if you're if you're a manufacturer that's selling items that are high price point, high consideration items on Amazon, on Walmart, on across any retailer, you need to kind of focus in on what's the shopper path to purchase on those. For those items. So obviously people are spending a lot more time researching those SKUs online. So are what does your content that's more focused on conversion look like? So what percentage of your pages have videos? What percentage of your pages have below the fold content? How many reviews do you have? Are those reviews recent? Do you have a robust number of reviews on each of your SKUs? Knowing that people that are shopping those categories are spending a lot more time actually researching the SKU on the product detail page. So, they're not going to Google as much, they're actually going on to the retailer site and expect that same level of information. So in that particular category, content and ratings and reviews will be more of a focus. If you're listening in and you're in the fresh category, so we work with like some bakery clients where in-stock reporting at the individual store level is key. So they're not only reporting on Walmart overall. They want reporting on every single Walmart online grocery pickup location. What does our in-stock rate look across those? So if you're in the fresh category or dairy, anything like that, that would be reporting that would be more specific to that category. If you're in a very fragmented category with a lot of new niche brands, and you know that people really search those broader category terms, they don't have a brand affiliation necessarily, it's an emerging category, for example, then you really need to be focused in on visibility. Are we on the first page? Are we visible? Do we need to be putting more sponsored search in place? Do we need to be running more media on this retailer to ensure that we get caught and we are visible to the shopper? So for the most part, I would say that they're universal, but depending on the category that you're in and what the shopper's path to purchase is, you might want to prioritize some metrics ahead of others when it comes to internal reporting.
Great, thanks, Julianne. And you just mentioned, localized e-commerce, the last mile fulfillment, the click and collect, buy online, pick up in store. and you touched upon this a bit, but how can we engage our internal brick-and-mortar teams to focus on e-commerce? So really, how can we best promote e-commerce to those teams and work with them to optimize performance online?
Yeah, this is a common one that we hear because, when you've got your key account manager at Kroger or Harris Teeter and, they might not even get POS data broken out by fulfillment models, so they're just looking at their total sales and they're just not focused on e-com. They think it's, less than 5%. Of revenue, so they're just not as focused on it. So really you need a strong internal education program in place. You need that evangelist within your company that's going out and educating the market on the importance of this. Even though the actual purchase might be happening in store, all those digital touch points that lead to that purchase are all kind of digitally driven, e-com driven. Also, like I was mentioning there at the end of the webinar, just around having a key account manager that is focused on the omni-channel or the e-com side of that retailer. So a lot of our manufacturers will have someone that's focused on Kroger, but someone on the team that's very much focused on the e-com side of Kroger, and they're focused in on that. Case studies are important as well, and just getting that reporting and those case studies in front of them. We optimized our titles, or we worked to update mobile optimized images online, and here's the list that we saw on your particular retailer. It's getting those key account managers educated and aware of the impact of some of the work that you're doing. That's kind of really the only way that you can convince them to kind of come on board with the movement that you're trying to push around kind of digital commerce and making sure that they're aware of what's changing with retail.
Great. Here's a good one that just came in. You just spoke about lift, and certainly there's that derivation between kind of the selling side and the marketing side of e-commerce. So for, spend on, advanced content, so, what are some ways that brands can track the ROI on those initiatives, whether it's a campaign spend or just, working on organic product detail page search optimization? Yeah,
that's below the fold content. Yeah, I see that, definitely see that question coming through. So, yeah, you're right. So getting the A+ content on Amazon, getting that web collage content across a lot of your retailers, it's expensive, and what's the ROI? I think one of the metrics that you could look at is around conversion. So to be clear, like on Amazon, like the A+ content doesn't impact search at all. It has no impact on search the same way that optimizing your titles and your bullets have. The A+ content really just drives conversion below the fold. So you've got someone on the page, they're reading your bullet points, those need to be robust. Then they scroll down and they see that really expensive content, those videos, that enhanced content below the fold. So what might be helpful here in terms of ROI would be to look at traffic and conversion. So what was traffic on those sites, on those pages before, and what was the conversion coming off that? Then we loaded on below the fold content. Did conversion, did more people convert on that page, and can we tie that back with sales? So that's definitely something that we can help with to go deeper, particularly on Amazon, where that's probably where you're starting out with your advanced and A+ content. We could look to potentially do an ROI kind of study there to understand the impact of that. But really, it's around conversion there, because you're not going to see like search improvement necessarily. You will organically over time as more people buy the item because they're seeing that content, etc.
Perfect. Staying sort of on the visibility aspect of it, what are some ways and KPIs that brands could use to really track the visibility of their products, and probably more specifically the product detail pages?
Sure. So when it comes to visibility, the first thing you need to look at is like share of search. So get your category keywords identified. So whether you can get that information from the retailer, depends. Some retailers will hold that very close to their chest. But if you can work with someone on the retailer side to ask, okay, how are people searching my category on your site online? So once you've got those category keywords, you can get them from Amazon if you've got ARA Premium. Then you start to understand, okay, how are people searching? And then using Clavis, we can go out each day and go onto your retail sites and search for those category keywords and show you where you are visible and where you're not. So for example, if you're in the soup category, let's just say, and you've got a couple of top keywords that people search. So they search soup, they search organic soup, they search microwavable soup, for example. We can look at those keywords and tell you, okay, on the first page, what percentage are you winning versus competitors? And then you start to understand where the visibility gaps are. And then once you understand where those gaps are, you can then start to look at, okay, do I need to invest in paid search as a short-term strategy? But really, what do I need to be doing longer-term around my content? Can I optimize my titles? Can I optimize my content on the product detail page to kind of help build that gap? Or is there a gap in my assortment or different pack size that I need to be thinking about? So really, the first thing in terms of visibility really would be that share of search report, but then also you've got the traffic report as well that just shows you how many people are visiting your page, but that's kind of secondary. This is the first part I would look at reporting on, is really just for my key SKUs, are they on the first page? Are they in the consideration set at all online? Great,
perfect. Going back a skosh to kind of integrating, data points and data sources, how can we utilize e-commerce data, so that digital shelf data, with our online EPOS systems to drive sales growth and somewhat, prioritize our actions by the team?
Yeah, definitely. So this is the holy grail, taking your digital shelf data and marrying it up with your EPOS data allows you to do that test and learn ROI calculation. So, we ran a promo on, we ran a lightning deal on Amazon. How much of a lift did we see? Then we actually ran a coupon on that page. What was the lift? What was the difference in sales when we ran a 20% off coupon versus a 10% off coupon? So those are some of the insights that you can get to when you're marrying those two data points together. And when it comes to Amazon right now, we can help in that space. We've got the POS data for Amazon, and we're starting to load it into Clavis, starting next month. So that's one area. I know that's quite Amazon focused, but even broader than that, it's really being able to take the POS data and applying the Clavis data against that to understand where those, kind of what the impact is on sales when you're implementing different strategies. So you might actually realize that you're at a point of diminishing returns. We were really heavily syndicating reviews. It helped with sales. We saw a lift. And now we're at a point where, we kind of reaching that point where it doesn't really make sense in Q4 to continue to push reviews. Let's pick that back up in January, for example. So it allows you to do those kind of test and learn initiatives, and it also allows you to understand ROI of some of the strategies that you're putting in place, and what makes sense to continue to focus on, and what might make sense to park for a while and focus on some other areas. The last piece I would say as well is lost revenue. So because you're able to look at items being out of stock over time through digital shelf reporting, you could then marry that up with your sales data to be able to put in front of the retailer like a lost revenue report or an opportunity report at a joint business planning session or in one of your meetings, to kind of work with them to optimize inventory strategy for their online business, because you can immediately see then the lost revenue, with items being out of stock. So that's another key use case for marrying those data sets together.
Perfect. So we have time for one final question, which I think really hits home the omni-channel point here of e-commerce. Are there different metrics we should be tracking on a pure play retailer like an Amazon versus an omni-channel retailer like a Walmart or a Target or Carrefour overseas?
Sure, absolutely. So I would say, kind of like the category question, it is very similar. So like those that have a best-in-class measurement program in place are applying the same metrics across retailers and holding their e-com team and their retailer teams to the same standards, in terms of getting content right. So again, what the content that you're testing on a Walmart or on a Tesco might be very different than the content rules you're testing on an Amazon, because they're more advanced. So obviously you need to adjust the reporting depending on the retailer's capabilities, but overall you should have the same kind of KPI in terms of having perfect content across your retailers. So in many ways it is similar KPIs, but I would say on the pure play side, there are kind of some nuances. So, share might be one that you want to look into. So it is kind of a new world. There's a lot of marketplace brands on these pure play sites. There's a lot of niche brands that have grown up online, and you need to get the visibility into your share in the category. So that would be one to focus on there. Specifically around Amazon as well, it might be interesting to put some reporting in place around the different statuses. So if you get Amazon Choice status, what does that do in terms of a lift in sales? How can you get that on other SKUs if you're seeing a good effect there? Same thing around just a different kind of Amazon specific kind of metrics, like the impact of paid search when you run a campaign on Amazon, or the different types of promos that you put on place there. What's your ROI on those? So it may be slightly different, but for the most case, I would say that the metrics are kind of pretty similar across retailers, and holding each retailer team and your own e-com team and content team to the same standards, and then prioritizing the retailers accordingly.
Perfect. Well, great. Well, thank you, Julianne. Really great insights. If you want to scroll forward a couple of slides.
Sure.
Perfect. Well, thank you. A few announcements before we leave. Our friends at Plant Retail R&G are actually offering a webinar tomorrow, Winning E-commerce in China and the U.S. I will actually be sending the registration link later this afternoon, so if you are available, you certainly can attend. We will also be at a number of shows this season in the U.S. You can visit us at the Path to Purchase E-commerce Symposium on October 2nd, at Grocery Shop in Las Vegas, the back end of October, or at the My Digital Shelf event on October 18th in Chicago. We are also having a survey which will appear as you enter or as you exit the webinar. Please do take the time to let us know what you thought of the content, to suggest future topics for webinars or even other content pieces. As a special thank you for participating, you'll receive a complimentary copy of our new white paper, Driving Amazon Traffic into Amazon Sales. Thank you once again, Julianne. Wonderful presentation, really deep and amazing insights. And thank you all for joining us. Certainly hope you enjoyed the presentation. For more information on Clavis and the extended capabilities of our essential e-commerce family with one-click Plant Retail R&G and the newest member, Brandview, you can visit clavisinsight.com/essential e-commerce, or you can certainly visit us at one of those upcoming shows. Thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful Wednesday. Goodbye.
Thank you.